Our bees have been in their home for 6 weeks now, and I know what you're thinking.
Hey, where's the beef? Where's the beef? I don't think there's anybody back there.
Well, maybe not where's the beef, but where's the honey? We'll get to that in a minute. A new neighbor has been spotted around the beehive. Her first name is Flo, and her last name is Hive, and she's cute. But first, let's briefly recap the past 6 weeks. First, we helped our friends at Taylor Honey package our bees in the bee yard. Now, that was an interesting experience, and painful for some.
Run, Carter, leave you alone. Keep running.
On day 1, we placed the queen in the hive and encouraged the rest of the colony to follow. Well, maybe encouraged might not be accurate, more like forced. During week 1, the girls were quick to figure out the long tube entrance. In week 2, we learned the waggle dance, and our girls were shaking directions to the delicious nearby flower patches. In week 3, as our bees began to build out the honeycomb in their hive, we watched them deposit their bucket loads of pollen into the cells. The pollen was quickly made into beautiful, colorful bee bread. Her Majesty the Queen made her long-awaited and unbelievable royal appearance in week 4. Now, that was a treat. During week 5, we watched nurse bees care for the young bees as the population of our bees in our hive began to grow. Which brings us to now. What next? Well, it's time to buzz back into the hive and learn how all of this translates into delicious honey. Think of our bees as a family of homesteaders on the great frontier who've just been given a large parcel of land to build a home on and to cultivate the land to produce the food necessary to not only sustain them each day, but to carry them through the long winter. Well, our bees are brand new homesteaders. They're just beginning to work their way through the home building process, and they're beginning to cultivate the land for planting. Or in our case, as their numbers increase, instead of cultivating the land, our bees will cultivate the honeycomb to hold the excess honey they will soon be producing. It's still early in the season, and it's a long summer. As much as I want to see the honeycomb full of beautiful honey, we must be patient. It will come. Everyone has seen the white beehive boxes scattered around the countryside. If I ask you what those boxes are, you'd say beehives with bees and honey inside, which is true. But one of those little white boxes is actually a complex, multi-story home with rooms that have specific purposes, just as our house has a garage, bedrooms, a kitchen, a pantry, and a nursery. Each box has 8 to 10 frames inside, like the frames in our observation hive. In fact, when our bees outgrow the observation hive, we'll simply move the frames to a box beehive. These box hives can range from a single box high to 5 boxes high. But why? With box beehives, the beekeeper will always leave the lower 2 boxes of the beehive exclusively for the queen. It's her space. The developing young bees inside the hive are called brood, and the queen will only use these lower 2 boxes for her brood. Therefore, the bottom 2 boxes are referred to as the brood chamber of the hive. This space in the hive is the queen's castle. It's her domain. Rarely, if ever, will the queen venture above the lower 2 boxes. If our bees were in a regular box hive right now, we would only have 1 box with 10 frames. However, as the bees increase in numbers and fill up the first box, we would add a second box to the brood chamber. Now, this is where the fun begins. Once the frames in the bottom 2 boxes, the brood chamber, are approximately 2/3 full of bees and built up honeycomb, we know at that point the colony is sufficiently strong to begin stockpiling honey. At this point, they can produce more than enough for their immediate needs. The brood chamber will be full of brood, pollen, and honey, but the boxes above the brood chamber are honey boxes, and those boxes are where the bees will store the honey exclusively. Just like the homesteaders, The bees know that summer will not last forever, and their entire purpose for making honey is to stockpile it so they will have enough food to get them through the long, cold winter months. Leaving the lower two boxes to be used by the queen as her brood chamber, a device called a queen excluder is then placed on top of the brood chamber, so on top of the second box. The queen excluder allows worker bees wanting to deposit their nectar into the honeycomb in the honey boxes pass through, but the queen, who is larger than the worker bees, cannot. The queen is therefore confined to the lower boxes. As one honey box fills, the beekeeper will add an additional honey box. Nothing makes a beekeeper prouder than to stack a hive high with boxes. The difference in the strength of different beehives can be striking, and generally it's all a result of the quality of the queen in any given hive. Weaker queens will be replaced. When the honey in the honeycomb is just perfect, the bees literally seal every cell with an airtight wax covering, preserving the honey in its perfect form. A beehive is literally Mother Nature's perfect canning factory, perfectly sealing each honeycomb cell with an airtight wax cap. There is nothing more beautiful than a frame of honeycomb from the upper honey boxes packed full of pure white, capped honeycomb. At some point, the beekeeper will remove the capped frames of honeycomb from the upper honey boxes of the hive to extract the honey. Of course, the beekeeper must be wise enough to leave enough honey for the bees to last them through the winter. The beekeeper removes the wax capping with a hot knife and then spins the honey out of the cells in a machine called an extractor. Honey flows out of the extractor where impurities will be filtered out and the honey is then bottled. The now empty frame of honeycomb is saved for the next year when it can be used by the bees, saving them the effort of rebuilding all of the beautiful honeycomb. So back to our observation hive. What we have right now is just a brood chamber. It is only the beginning of what the future beehive will be when our bees outgrow our observation hive in a month or so. Then we will remove the bees and the frames from our observation hive and move them into a regular box hive. So while we will see parts of the honeycomb fill with honey, our bees are currently building out a brood chamber of their hive. They have the big picture in mind, but for now, our bees are working their hardest, and we will continue to watch their unbelievable progress as they work on making the most of their homestead.
We all know quite a number of people who have everything that it would take to be happy, and they are not happy because they want something else, or they want more of the same. And we all know people who have lots of misfortune, and they are deep